Welcome to Regent Park TV. I'm Gabriel, and today we're discussing an important initiative aimed at addressing youth unemployment in our city. The Economic and Community Development Committee took a decisive step towards addressing this crisis with the referral of a motion to create the Youth Employment Program, aimed at providing up to 10,000 additional summer jobs for young people by 2026. The decision came as part of an ongoing effort to combat the rising youth unemployment rate in the city, which currently stands at 20%. The motion was initiated by the Toronto Youth Cabinet, which has been a key advocate for youth employment opportunities in the city. In Regent Park, a historically underserved area, youth unemployment is disproportionately high, and the lack of employment opportunities contributes directly to social and economic challenges. By creating job opportunities, the program seeks to provide youth with the tools to break the cycle of violence and poverty, offering them a sense of direction, purpose, and the opportunity for future success. The motion's passage represents a win not only for the young people of Toronto, but also for the entire city, as it invests in its future by giving youth the support they need to thrive. And now, we'll hear from city councillors, youth advocates, and members of the Toronto Youth Cabinet as they share their insights on this crucial discussion.
Well, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Stephen. I'm the Executive Director of the Toronto Youth Cabinet, the City of Toronto's official youth advocacy body. I want to begin with the words of a 20-year-old from Etobicoke. A job would mean more than just money. It would be my lifeline. I've seen too many friends go down the wrong path with drugs and crime because they felt they had no other options. When you're surrounded by negative influences and your pockets are empty, it's easy to make choices you'll regret. A summer job would give me purpose, keep me focused, and show me there's a better way forward. This is the reality for thousands of youth in Toronto. Over the past year, we have spoken to youth from every corner of this city, from Kensington to Jane and Finch, Bleecker to Rexdale, Malvern to Flemington, young people experiencing homelessness, young people living in Toronto community housing, young people at risk of involvement in violence and crime, and those facing systemic barriers to employment. And they all say the same thing. They want to work, they want to contribute, they want to build a better future. That's why, in partnership with the Neighborhood Group Community Services, we launched the largest youth-led advocacy campaign in Toronto's recent history. Through this campaign, we have championed youth-led, youth-centered, community-driven advocacy in our relentless pursuit of hope and the fight for opportunities for Toronto's young people. First, we convened over 150 Black, Indigenous, and newcomer young people at our Youth Employment Summit alongside key stakeholders, nonprofits, and private sector partners. Then, we mobilized 30,000 young people through our postcard campaign calling for a Toronto Youth Employment Program to create 10,000 additional jobs for youth by summer 2026. And these postcards are not just pieces of paper, they are 30,000 cries of hope. Finally, 41 organizations came together in a joint statement demanding urgent action on youth employment and the rise in youth violence. We believe that this moment requires bold action. Toronto's youth unemployment rate is at its highest since a decade. And we know young people who are equity deserving are disproportionately affected by this. We've seen an increase in youth firearm arrests and a surge in youth-involved carjackings, jewelry store robberies, and other criminal acts. And I know that if we're serious about community safety, we must be equally serious about providing economic opportunities for young people. The motion before you today, MM 24.2, must be supported in full, which is our desire. I also want to address a separate motion being brought forward. And while we support its intent, we have a responsibility to ensure it is as strong and as clear as possible, because clarity creates confidence for young people and community stakeholders. First, we're seeking that a commitment that we've all aligned on, which is 10,000 additional jobs by summer 2026, be agreed upon, and not an equivocal target of 10,000 jobs, which we believe leaves open to interpretation, but real, net new, and non-existent opportunities. Third, or I should say second, we need a firm report back timeline. Our desire is that this motion indicate a report back ideally in Q4 of 2025, and receiving this commitment will ensure that we are aligned with the city's pre-budget and budget processes for 2026. Without this, there's no realistic way to meet our target. I really want to emphasize that if we want to address the rise in youth violence, if we want to see safer communities, we must invest in youth employment, because the best antidote to crime is a good job. This isn't just about jobs, it's also about hope. It's about providing young people with a future they can believe in. It will take all levels of government, along with private sector investment, to make it a reality. We don't expect, nor should the city cough the whole bill for this initiative, but rather working in partnership with other levels of government to ensure it can come to fruition. Today, we have the opportunity to take bold action, to tap into the fierce urgency of now, and we urge you all to make these crucial improvements to the motion and stand with Toronto's young people, because they have spoken, and now it's time for the City of Toronto to act.
On your assertion that this will be effective to combat rising youth violence, I certainly see it in my community. Why are you confident that this will be an effective strategy to combat rising youth violence, rising gang membership, participation, and lack of belonging many youth feel?
Yeah, young people are facing a really negative socioeconomic conditions, poverty, food insecurity, lack of community support, so on and so forth. And many of our young people are, really craving opportunity, and they're gonna unfortunately get that from bad actors in their community, which is why I was saying, if the city doesn't give, and all levels of government don't give young people an alternative to engaging in organized crime, engaging in gun violence, so on and so forth, young people are gonna fall through those cracks to make ends meet, and not just to support themselves, but to support their parents. And like I started with my remarks, that's what young people have told us in our postcard campaign, in our consultations on social media. And so we know that, like I said, the best antidote to crime is a good job, and providing that will provide young people with hope.
Iman Lunat, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Iman Lynette. I am a 20-year-old master's student in public policy at York University. I am here today as a first-generation Canadian of immigrant parents to speak about the importance of the Toronto Youth Employment Program and how it affects young people like me. Finding a job as a young person in this city has been incredibly difficult, far more than I expected. Despite being educated with a bachelor's degree in political science from Wilfrid Laurier University and being driven and eager to work, I faced rejection after rejection, often because I didn't have enough experience. But how do I gain experience when no one will give me a chance? I've seen the struggle not just with myself, but I also seen it with the lives of my friends as well. Many had to move back with their parents because they couldn't afford basic living expenses and rent, and some even work back-to-back multiple part-time jobs, but it still wasn't enough to meet the basic living expenses. And unfortunately, some youth have also turned into crime with the rise in carjacking, gun violence, and drugs. As a child of immigrant parents, I have first had an experience with the challenge that many young people from marginalized communities face when trying to enter the workforce. For many of us, stable employment isn't just about earning a paycheck, it's about breaking the cycle of economic hardship, gaining independence, and building a future where we can contribute to our communities. However, these systematic barriers such as the lack of professional networks, limited access to mentorship, and the need for early financial responsibility often make it difficult for youth like me to secure meaningful employment. The future of our city rests in the hand of our youth, yet we are struggling to find stable employment. In many communities, young people are not just preparing for the workforce, they're already the breadwinners, carrying responsibility beyond their years. As someone who has grown up in community housing, I personally felt the weight of this reality. I struggled to find job opportunities and even had to worry about affording basic necessities like groceries. With youth unemployment at critical levels and the economic pressures, including the tariffs and trade shifts, which is threatening our local job market, the time for action is now. If we fail to invest in the meaningful job opportunities for young people today, we risk jeopardizing the economic stability of Toronto tomorrow. Programs like the Toronto Youth Employment Program are essential because they bridge this gap. They provide opportunities for skill development, hands-on work experience, and connections to employers who might not otherwise consider hiring young people from diverse or underrepresented backgrounds. However, these programs need continued investment, expansions, and stronger partnership with different industries that offer long-term career pathways to make a genuine difference. It is a lifeline for so many young people who need the support, mentorship, and access to opportunities that can break this cycle. Currently, the program is falling short of reaching many of us, and the resources it provides are insufficient to meet the growing needs of youth in our city. I'm urging the committee to commit to creating Toronto Youth Employment Program today with an additional 10,000 summer jobs for young people by 2026. We urgently need programs that connect us with real job opportunities and offer mentorship that can lead to long-term success. As we say, youth is the future generation, so this is just an investment in young people. It's an investment in Toronto's future. Without meaningful action, more youth will struggle, fall behind, and lose hope and will turn to crime. But it will improve the outreach to communities that need it most and ensure youth voices remain the center of decision-making. And supporting this initiative means investing in the future of Toronto, its workforce, innovation, and equity. Thank you for listening to my deputation, and I am pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputant? I just have one because you mentioned that you are a graduate.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you can speak to this. Councillor Candeval asked earlier about, is it clear that the jobs could be somewhere other than the City of Toronto? As part of the Economic Development Strategy development later last year, we actually convened a table of HR directors from across the city, major employers. And what they told us is that they have a terrible talent shortage. Terrible talent shortage. And what I said to them is, then why does every youth coming out of post-secondary that I speak to say they cannot penetrate any HR department and get an interview? Have you had that experience where you've got talent to offer, you just can't get through the HR wall to get an interview with a human being? Is that your experience?
Yeah, that has been my experience. I also applied to the City of Toronto also, but
yes,
again,
I mean, I include us. They were one of the HR directors at that table.
Yeah, no response, not even like a rejection email, but it's also like the whole thing with AI and technology, right? Now there's ChatGPT, if the resumes are being filtered, but it's just that there's so many new barriers and new advances in technology and new stuff that is coming along that makes it harder for us, like as youth, to actually like showcase our talent or showcase we are dedicated, like we do want to work, like we want to have the opportunity, just like any other person, right? Just to make the money and afford basic needs or afford nice things that I want in life, right?
Yeah. So even if, because this is a thing we could do that doesn't cost that money, even if we could alter that process and ask other corporations to do the same, to say, if they're not getting to interview, can you respond and tell them, sorry, you're not getting interview, and here's what was missing. This is what's missing, and here's why you haven't made it to interview, so that you could at least then go and continue getting the qualifications that get you to interview. You don't know where to go if you get nothing back.
Exactly. That's why I have even reached out to the jobs that I posted, like applied to before, still no response. And some of the jobs that are even posted, they're just been there, they're just sitting there. And there's no way for us to actually get out of this barrier because we're just stuck behind this big wall that we can't get across. So as you said, it's just hard for us to reach an actual human being to actually talk to us and be like, oh, okay, yes, we value you. This is like, we see that you're dedicated. We see that you're hardworking. And I see this is the skills that you bring. So
thank you. Thank you for that insight. Are there any other questions of this deputant? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Okay. We have Serena Nadell.
My name is Serena Nudell, and I'm the Director of Community Programs at TNG Community Services. Within my youth and youth justice portfolio, we serve over 2,500 racialized, newcomer, and justice-involved youth each year. And with all those youth that I serve, I feel a responsibility to communicate what I've heard and what I see as their needs. Over the last year, we worked with the Toronto Youth Cabinet to collaborate with thousands of youth-serving agencies citywide, different levels of government and government departments, as well as the private sector, to understand the cross-sectoral needs and interests in a summer youth employment program in the City of Toronto. I really understand and appreciate that there's support for this program within Council and within the City, and I'd like to take the opportunity to ensure that this program is prioritized. I want to thank the committee for your collaborative approach in developing a recommendation for this motion. There are two key items which I request that are tweaked. As in my role, I've written a lot of grants and I oversee a lot of projects. And one thing that I know is always true is to develop SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. And I know that the city asks me to include those in my grants as well. And so I hope that those can be applied to this motion. And in saying that, I request that we're specific that it's an additional 10,000 summer jobs as opposed to just 10,000 summer jobs. We know that the city already does a wonderful job and offers lots of employment opportunities for young people, but it simply is not meeting the need right now. And there's so much more room for improvement through collaboration with all levels of government and in the private sector, as mentioned, and to ensure that wording of an additional 10,000 summer jobs is included. And further, in terms of the timeline on the report back, I just really want to make sure that it's very explicit that this is done by the end of year in 2025, just so that, as in the Sidewalks to Skylines action plan, if this is to be by 2026, we're going to need to invest resources in it, and to be able to have the share back before the end of the year will really ensure that we can include those resources in the budget. So I just, with a couple minutes I have left, I'd really love to share with you, because I think Stephen had mentioned the massive postcard campaign that we had with youth across the city. And we've been analyzing the data, and I just wanted to share with you, as many of the youth who from our organization are unable to be here today. So there was one question that we've analyzed 1,000 responses in terms of why should the city create a summer youth employment program? The top answers are for knowledge, skills, experience, and skill building. 63% of respondents said that. They believe that this will help them gain valuable work experience, build their resumes, and prepare for future careers. They feel that it's very hard to get a job without prior experience, and this could give them a meaningful opportunity. It also would help with their social skills, time management, money management, communication, and soft skills. And to share a quote from one of the young people, if youth get work experience when they're younger, they have the potential to contribute more to society in the future. Additionally, it can serve as a compass for youth who don't know what career they want to pursue. Another important finding that came out, 39% of youth said it's for financial stability and independence. Youth don't want to earn their own money. They don't want to rely on their parents. They need it to cover personal expenses, school supplies, and other needs. One youth had said, I want a job so I can help my parents do groceries and buy school supplies for myself. I want to help my family as much as I can. It would help, another youth had said, it would help low-income households for them to just get a little bit more. And finally, another major theme of 22% of youth said for personal growth, self-empowerment, and connection to community. Some responses highlighted that employment would keep them away from being engaged in negative behaviors and keep them involved in productive activities. One youth had said, it will help us not resort to making money in other ways. So it's clear there's a great need for this program, and it would have a tremendous impact in the city. And I thank you for your consideration, and hope that you pass the motion on and help us move it forward.
I was just looking at the draft of the motion that you're referring to. Councillor Fletcher has some questions for you.
Yes, hi. I see that Councillor Myers, who's head of the TTC, was one of the sponsors of the motion at council. Have you had a chance to meet with him and look at a youth employment program, summer jobs program at the TTC specifically?
I think that I haven't met with Councillor Myers specifically, but that's a wonderful place to start in terms of an opportunity for further youth employment.
So do you see that your group and the youth cabinet would meet with Councillor Myers to look at scoping out what kind of a hiring process there might be for youth jobs, or does one exist now? Do you know if one exists?
Yeah, there's a summer program for youth at the TTC, but I think that there's also wonderful programs at Toronto Community Housing, the TDSB. We're hoping with this opportunity we can increase those opportunities for young people through those places where there already are successful youth employment programs.
So is there anything in TCH budget, particularly to add more youth in the summer?
I'm not aware of any increases to that budget for this summer. I know that last year there was, I think, close to 450 young people who applied for 70 jobs. And so there was, you know, so many youth that came out dressed up and excited to get positions, and then they were turned away. We had a lot of support from TCHC for this program. They were one of our key partners for the Employment Summit in the summer, and I know that they're on board. I think that there is, you know, more advocacy that needs to be done for the investment.
Now, I asked that question earlier. Are you not quite concerned that the federal government cut their employment program? I know Eastview was cut, Ralph Thornton was cut. All of our community agencies had cuts to employment, and I'd like to know what you've done about that.
Oh, so I mean, at our organization, we have an employment skills and training program as well, and we've engaged in a lot of advocacy at all levels of government, including the federal government, several meetings with different levels of government.
I'm talking about the federal.
Yes, with the 100% for the federal, 100%, and letters.
What steps did
the
you
budget. Take? Yes, I wrote a letter to you know, for the budget consultation. Definitely at the federal level, there's been conversations. Our CEO has also met advocating. It is tremendously frightening to think that there's going to be further cuts to Canada Summer Jobs. If I can say one other area that we advocated for in advocating to the federal government is that often Canada Summer Jobs, there's this process of creaming where it's not often the young people who, you know, the young people who are facing barriers to employment aren't the ones who are getting the jobs. You know, oftentimes it can be
well, they certainly are if they work at TCHC and they live in TCHC.
Pardon? I don't understand
If they live
your
in
question.
TCHC, those summer jobs would be going to those tenants.
100%,
yeah.
but there's not, I mean, if there's, you know, less than whatever 20% of
understand.
people are getting jobs then.
But I'm just interested in the nature of that advocacy by
Yes.
the Youth Cabinet, meeting with every MP, petitions, that kind of activity. That's a lot of money that just went down the drain, and a lot of jobs
100%.
that went down the drain.
And I think
with that move. So,
yeah, and that's further advocacy that we're working on and will continue to work on 100%.
Thank you.
Okay, are there other questions of this deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you so much. The next deputant, I think this is online. Hassan Mohammed from TCBN.
Dear Chair and members of the Economic and Community Development Committee, my name is Hassan Mahmoud and I work as a Community Benefits Coordinator for the Toronto Community Benefits Network. I'm speaking here today in support of Councillor Parthy Kandavil and Councillor Jamal Myers' recommendation that members of City Council request the government to allocate additional investments for the purpose of creating a robust Toronto youth employment program. Growing up in the Lawrence West, Lawrence Heights area of North York during the 2000s as a Somali youth, I'd always been acutely aware of the lack of existing job opportunities in my community versus other places across the city. Many youth from priority neighborhoods can attest to experiencing the effects of harmful hiring practices such as postcode discrimination when looking for employment in establishments outside our respective local areas. As time went on, the situation got worse. More and more youth would go on to complete their studies at post-secondary institutions and find themselves trapped in a real world that wouldn't hire them unless they had the relevant entry-level experience, and were instead faced with a revolving door that led to unpaid internships, volunteer work, as well as entry-level positions where consistent hours were not guaranteed and upward mobility was not possible. Through our stakeholder engagement process at TCBN, we found the rising levels of youth unemployment, currently at its highest rate since 2014, are directly contributing to the record number of youth-perpetrated violent incidents in Toronto. There have been calls from multiple community groups, youth-focused agencies and committees, as you saw from the speakers today, for more youth job opportunities, especially for those who come from disadvantaged and vulnerable backgrounds. The overall cuts to employment services and public infrastructure have been particularly disastrous, leaving many youth frustrated and dejected with the lack of access to decent work. However, there have been a number of recent developments that present some opportunities to correct course and provide our youth with some much needed job and career options across multiple sectors. The federal government of Canada has pledged to commit a proposed $200.5 million investment for 2025 to 2026 in the Canada Summer Jobs Program, while a welcome change of pace is only the first step in the ongoing fight against youth unemployment. There will need to be dedicated funding streams and strategic collaborations with the province of Ontario to maximize the effectiveness of a Toronto youth employment program that truly addresses the employment gap in our city. The new Lawrence Heights Recreation and Child Care Center is expected to go into construction in 2026. And the city recently concluded its community feedback survey where residents were able to share which services and features they would like to see included as part of the new development. The local residents and especially youth have expressed significant interest in the potential employment, contracting, and social procurement opportunities that the construction of the new community center will no doubt create. The same also holds true for the Downsview Airport Lands project, albeit on a much larger scale, as the impact of this redevelopment, according to the plan area, estimated 52,000 new jobs, 63,000 mixed-use mid to high-rise building units, and approximate population of 115,000 folks over the next 30 years is massive and will most certainly affect multiple surrounding local communities in Toronto's Northwest. As part of our ongoing CBA for Downsview campaign launched in 2021, we at TCBN are striving to include a community benefits agreement as part of each phase of this historic development. Additionally, Toronto's status as a host city for next year's upcoming FIFA World Cup tournament, as well as Live Nation's recently announced 50,000-seat Rogers Stadium concert venue in Downsview, also present much-needed opportunities for leverage significant investments through new and existing partnerships in order to deliver more trades, operations, and service-based jobs for young people. As a Black-led organization and local community stakeholder, we at TCBN look forward to the continued engagement on this issue. I believe our youth deserve the chance to obtain gainful employment and not face collective disenfranchisement due to the overall lack of available opportunities. The city, of course, has an important role to play here, and I'm excited to see a future where we're able to successfully implement local and equitable employment approaches that ensure existing communities and vulnerable youth throughout Toronto are able to benefit from the projected growth of these developments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Fletcher, did you have questions?
Yeah, I just heard that big number, 225 million that's pledged. Do you know what the last year's budget was for Canada Youth Employment?
No, actually, I do not.
But they did cut it in half last year.
Yes.
Do you have any reason, is this a doubling of last year's budget? Is this, you're saying the 225 million?
Well, that's what the federal government's pledge was for this time around. But what we're saying is that we're going to need more collaboration across multiple levels of government.
No, I'm just talking about the federal government.
Yes.
Because they have a program that was cut in half.
Yes.
Is that greater number than what was cut in half? Are you telling me you actually believe that they're doing that this year? Or do we have any indication that they're restoring the cuts from 2024? Do you have any indication of that at TCBN?
No indication at this time.
You don't have any. So are you standing by the 225 that's going to be delivered this year?
The announcement was made that was listed, yes.
I understand that announcement was made, but if we dig down in there, would you at TCBN dig down in there and look at the numbers from 2024? Is that a doubling of last year's number, or is that the same? I'm very interested in their obligations to youth, because cutting the youth program last year was very detrimental in my community.
We could definitely look into that.
I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'll ask staff about that too.
Yeah, I think staff are dying to answer your questions. Yes.
I hear the answer from staff on that question I asked you. I think they know.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Hassan? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thanks so much. That was good to hear from the network. We're going to take it into questions of staff now. The motion asks, the motion is going to ask you for an inventory, and it actually asks us to look at the past 5 years. It asks us to look at socioeconomic data, and so on and so forth. I know you know the motion very well. Have we been keeping that data, or do we have the ability to when we're employing someone?
Thank you for the question. In a conversation that we had with 8 city divisions and agencies recently in response to the motion, People in Equity has confirmed that they have some challenges in being able to collect that data, both in terms of the technology capacity to be able to do that, as well as...
Oh, technology as well. Okay.
Right, as well as staff's if they're city jobs, staff's willingness to respond to the Count Yourself In survey, which does do some demographic analysis of city employees.
Right, but it's called Count Yourself In because they have to voluntarily take part in that. Okay. So can we just look at last year? By and large, and I know this is hard because it ebbs and flows with other orders of government's funding, but roughly, what is the youth employment number year in and year out? What's the base number? And it goes up and down according to interesting programs.
Do you mean the summer jobs for youth?
Yeah.
So on their website currently, they're slating 70,000 jobs for young people across the country.
Okay,
They
and
will fund.
how many of those land in Toronto or even the GTA? I have kids in my ward because we're north of the 401 that would happily take a job in Markham if they could get the interview. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Councillor, I don't have that number to reliably share.
Okay, so that might be a number we could ask them if they break it down as part of our advocacy. Okay, I had some other questions about the motion. Have you had a chance to talk, Mary's not here, but I wonder if you've had a chance to talk to the Chief People Officer. There's a fair amount asked for in terms of the assessment we're asking her to do here. And I understand that part of the reason the date is a little out of whack here is the motion was drafted a while back. So, but have you had a conversation? How much time would it take to do the assessment that is contemplated in number 4 in the motion?
So to the chair, it would take, I think, at least a full year, if not more. Partially, we do have a capacity and a resource issue. So we would be looking for funding in the 2026 budget in order to act on the motion.
Right, so it's not just a matter of if you did this assessment, whatever you were going to suggest in the way of youth employment, you need the money to do it. You actually don't even have the money to do this full assessment.
No.
On account of we're pretty tight with your budget.
Yes.
Yes. So we've got to look at that first. What we have before us today doesn't have a financial impact statement attached. It doesn't have the costing of what it would take to even implement the assessments and the sort of initial actions in this before we get to the jobs, because at this point it's a motion. It's not a report from staff. Otherwise it would have attached to it, what is the cost of doing this work?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. And then last but not least, have you had a chance to have an initial conversation with the federal government about, I'm just wondering about your level of advocacy right now, because when we go looking for, when we were very gung-ho and excited about Summer Jobs Canada, it was not just to get the city jobs, it was that component of it that says employers, small business employers, I think it was under 60 employees or something like that, 50, thank you, Deputy City Manager. We were excited about that part too, that we could get a double-barreled benefit there. We could get youth employed, but we also help our small businesses and particularly on main streets. Have we recently been advocating for that, or are we vocal when they make the cuts? Here's going to be the impact of that. What can you do for us? I'm asking because going back again could now be, that's a way to help small businesses in a trade war. So how current is that conversation, I guess, is the question in a nutshell.
To use Chair, Councillor Carroll, quite current. As of this week, city manager and senior staff sat down with senior officials with the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario.
Yes.
We currently have an open agreement called the Toronto Economic Resiliency Initiative, which has 4 components, most of which touch main streets. And we've talked, given the recent context, about reopening that agreement and seeking a supplement of funds that could be used, among other things, for hiring by BIAs, as was done during COVID, to support small business and main streets.
So we could be advocating for that. While all this work is going on within the motion, that's something we could do right now. And we could say with particular focus on making sure that that youth program was valuable during COVID. If you brought that back, it becomes a component of helping small businesses in our difficult times ahead.
That's correct. The meeting was just yesterday. We were at early stages of the conversation, but we hope to pursue that.
Okay, excellent. Okay, those are my questions. Councillor Candeval. And this is me, and I keep forgetting to set the clock, but I just set it for you. I don't know what that means. I will be lenient.
Just a couple, through you, Chair, to staff, just to get a better sense, because I know this has been an important project for the Toronto Youth Cabinet for many months last year, and wanted to get a sense of the level of engagement with SDFA and ECDEV.
So through the chair, the Toronto Youth Cabinet met with staff from my division during the summer. They also met with staff, I believe, from economic development. They also went to meet with Parks and Recreation and several other city divisions or agencies last summer.
Was your experience that it was there was diligence given to helping craft this idea, which I think is really what's on the table, and an important idea?
So certainly the Toronto Youth Cabinet has been open to staff advice and has made some adjustments to the letter that was part of the motion. Staff understand, as I noted earlier, the context, the needs and situations that they are speaking to, and we would agree that youth employment is one of the social determinants of health and important as a prevention in safety. I think where there has been some difference is that staff have also advised of the number of challenges that we are facing, particularly as it relates to budget and resources, to add substantial new opportunities. And so I think that that's part of the reason why, in addition to it being a part of the action plan for Toronto's economy, which happened last fall, that the motion is still back in front of you today.
Thank you, Denise, and to Pat from the Economic and Community Development team, if there was any engagement and interaction.
Through the chair to you, Councillor, our team works really closely with SDF&A. EDC staff have been involved in meetings with the Toronto Youth Cabinet. We have provided advice, as Denise has just said, around context, clarifying the elements you sought to clarify in the deputant's presentation around the number, it being incremental, the time frame, where these jobs lie, et cetera. We've provided advice about our understanding of the functioning of the economy and youth employment within it. The one thing that's not been done is to put this in context with more recent economic difficulties related to the U.S.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Moise, you had questions of staff?
Yeah, so you mentioned Summer Jobs Canada has reduced their funding significantly, which for 2025, there's only 900 positions that will be available. Is there a similar funding provincially?
So through the chair, just one clarification. Our funding for the Toronto Youth Job Corps is from Service Canada and the feds.
Sorry, Service Canada, my apologies.
In terms of provincial funding, no. Not that we're aware, nothing that is very specific to these youth programs like we've had with the federal government.
Okay, so Service Canada historically provided about 2,000 jobs, and Toronto, how much jobs have we provided in regards to youth employment over the years?
Sorry, Councillor, I was a little bit distracted trying to see if my colleague from Employment and Social Services had anything to offer. Could you repeat your question?
So Service Canada historically have provided X amount of dollars, and which calculates about 2,000 jobs per year. That's been reduced now to 900 as 2025. But how many jobs do the City of Toronto provide for summer employment outside of the Service Canada amount? Or do we not?
So our summer placement program, historically, it's about 212 programs, 212 students. That does not include parks, which would be over and above what People in Equity helps to fill.
For a total number. So including parks and other city.
I'm going to pass it over to Aiden, who will supplement the answer.
Through the chair, good afternoon, Councillor, excuse me. Parks and Recreation employs approximately about 7,000 youth in the summer, of the roughly about 11,000 existing staff that are on our roster. So 7,000 of them work actively in the summer months.
So that's just Parks and Recs.
That is correct.
But I'm looking at like all divisions. If you factor in youth employment, is there a number that we can actually like 20,000 jobs?
To the chair, Councillor, that is one, the first part of the new motion, task staff with creating an inventory. It's to be able to unequivocally answer the question that you are asking.
Okay.
So we are piecing it together between the things that People in Equity know and Parks, Forestry, and Recreation and a number of other divisions. We would be able to give you a far more precise number in the report back.
Looking at Councillor Bravo's motion here, is asking to establish 10,000 summer jobs for young people in 2026. So I'm just trying to assess what the existing versus what is being asked here. So, but to your point, you're actually doing an inventory of that right now.
So an early estimate would be about 7,300 currently.
Okay. So based on the ask, you need to find an additional 3,000 more jobs?
No, that's not what the motion says.
You don't have to.
Additional.
That's the answer.
Councillor Candeval.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I want to appreciate the dissent, debate, and discussion that came out of this motion in December. And it, I think, benefits all when policy motions are put through this process. And I appreciate a few key items in Councillor Bravo's amendment motion is the inclusion of additional jobs. I think it's key that we recognize we're looking to grow and expand the availability of youth employment, but also giving us the flexibility by including up to 10,000. And I think that's a great compromise. And my key comment is that to staff, that we have an early Q4, September-October report, which allows us the benefit of including this conversation in the budget process, as we know, the bulk of which happens September to December. Secondly, I'd like to thank TYC for their diligent work in bringing this forward. As imperfect as it may be, it's an important opportunity to address a big reality in our city that's facing many young people. Secondly, I'd like to thank Councillors Bravo, Chair Carroll, Wyndham for all their support in crafting this compromise motion to move this forward in the coming months. A few observations I'd like to share. In my community that I represent for now and living almost 30 years plus, there's a remarkable change in the last few years. When I go to my local Home Depot, or burrito boys. What used to be many local kids that I would see at graduations when I was a school trustee are now being replaced by temporary foreign workers and/or international students. And I think this is an important reality in suburban neighborhoods where we've seen a demographic change in youth employment opportunities that need to be addressed. These are tough conversations, but we can only get through it through discussion and debate. Sadly, we've seen over the last 3 years in particular, the rise in fatal youth violence, whether it's in Dixon, Lawrence Heights, Driftwood, Chesterly, in my neighborhood of Cataraqui, Galloway, Farmacote, or Regent Park. We've seen tremendous youth upsurge. And this needs to be addressed and made a priority by City Council. And there's no higher indication or signal of a priority through budget. And this is my hope in the coming months, especially with the report back in early Q4, that we address this through the budgetary process and we can push back on the increasing reality that Toronto is becoming a tale of two cities. And we have to be absolutely conscious of the realities of the neighborhoods and the dramatic changes we're seeing in our city. And I think this is also an important cultural point of reflection. By being in the political space I've seen how this conversation evolve in center-right and right-wing circles where we saw the police debate last year. And now I'm increasingly seeing folks who recognize the need, or traditionally on the right of the spectrum, the need to address the root causes of youth violence. And this is heartening because I'm of the belief what happens here is downstream from what happens in greater society, where I've seen the conversation change from all sides of the spectrum that we have to address the root causes of violence. And to that point, and perhaps it's an amendment at council, but I do think there's value as the data is being collected that we see where these jobs are being located. And I think that's a critical element of not just the opportunity and the availability of jobs, but the locale and location of these jobs. So as the next steps start to form following March Council, my hope is that there's greater engagement with all members of our community here in this space, and we begin the narrative and the conversation, not just at City Hall, but across our city for the need to address youth unemployment and youth violence. Thank you.
Okay, I see, Councillor Mantis, I see your hand. I have Councillor Moist, though. Then I have, oh, you're not going? Okay. So then I have Councillor Mantis and Councillor Malik, did you wish to speak? Okay, and then I have myself. Councillor Mantis, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Councillor Candeval and Councillor Bravo for their motions, and also to say that the jobs that we are creating have to also be sustainable jobs that will be for the years to come. I understand that the Youth Cabinet is asking for 10,000 jobs, but or additional jobs, but we also have to make sure that these jobs are jobs that these numbers are going to be still there for the years to come, because next year we do have FIFA and there will be thousands of jobs created, but but 2026 will be a year that you can call it as an anomaly in the sense of the number of jobs that are going to be created for one specific year. So the 10,000 need to be over the duration of the years to come, but also have all stakeholders and industries and our unions involved to create summer jobs for the youth. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, those are your comments. And if there's no one else, I'll just do some comments. I want to thank Chair Bravo for the replacement motion that we have before us, because what it does is take us back to what we already adopted. It makes one nuance change. It's adding the word up to and additional. And those are the only things that are missing from the economic plan you already adopted last fall. This is my constant soapbox. We don't need to be dreaming up new things because we adopted the kinds of things we need to do last year. And we started down the road of doing them when we adopted the 2025 budget. The Sidewalks to Skylines Economic Action Plan, as you may recall, since you all voted for it, is about three things: strong main streets, quality jobs, and economic competitiveness. Things we desperately need. And under each of those three things are drivers, i.e. economic indicators today, why we're taking an action, and then the action, and then how will we know when we have succeeded, the success indicator. And the very first, I'm going to repeat this, the very first action under quality jobs starts with this driver. Toronto's youth unemployment rate is the highest it has been in a decade at 16.8%. And as you heard Mr. Tobin say, it's now even higher. A signal of an emerging crisis in unemployment and underemployment for Toronto's young residents. So the action we are taking is to build opportunity for Toronto's youth with local partners, with the private sector, and including the work of the Employment Service System Manager, who now does our main employment, develop greater employment and professional development opportunities for Toronto's youth with a focus on Indigenous, Black, and equity-deserving groups. You already adopted that. And the success indicator that you adopted was, we'll know that we've succeeded at the end of this plan if with those partners we've ensured that there are 10,000 summer jobs for young people by 2026. Most of the indicators and the actions, we're leading to success indicators 10 years later, but this one we said we wanted by the end of 2026. So this is a great motion, we just didn't need it because you already directed staff to do this. You all voted for it. You then all voted, everyone in this room anyway, voted for the budget, which is how staff are going to start that work. They don't have the money to do all the things in that motion, the original motion, but this is work they were intending to do and must do to achieve what you directed them to achieve. So we're getting there. But I think I'm just going to take this moment to say, while we do that, we owe it to you, and I'm speaking now to the young people in this room, to be dead honest with you at all times. In my experience in my neighborhood, the adult working at Burrito Boys is not a temporary foreign worker. That's a particular thing where you bring them in because you can't fill that job. They're able to fill the job at Burrito Boys with adults who live in Toronto. Because as many of you know, sometimes it's your own relatives, your older brother who's now 28, or sometimes even your dad. Adults too are unemployed, not at the rate of youth. That is a dire high rate, but they too are unemployed. And so the person working at Burrito Boys may not be a temporary foreign worker, but he may be a newcomer to Toronto. And 20 years ago, he would have got a job at Molson's. He would have got a job on the assembly line where they were making the President's Choice food that they now make in Mexico. He would have had a job on any number of our employment lines or making auto parts. Or if he went back to school, he'd start working his way up through any number of the white-collar employees that I had in my business park in Consumers Road that is now about half its size. So we have a lot of employment needs to meet, and this is one of them. And we know that this problem, that number of 16.8 that is now 17 whatever, was such that we made this the first action under quality jobs. But we want to get the work right, and I think that's what Chair Bravo's motion that starts with a proper inventory and proper targets, because what we don't want to say is 10,000 jobs for 10,000 jobs' sake, and they're lousy jobs, and they don't lead you anywhere. You want us to make quality jobs that lead you to a good life in Toronto. And that's the work that staff want to do. And I think this motion gets us there. So I think we're all on the same page. But once you make a direction, we really have to rely on our professional staff that they're going to take those directions and start acting on them and keep reporting back to us. There is an annual report function to both Sidewalks to Skylines and Culture Connects so that we'll know how we're doing. We're going to report card ourselves all the way through it. And so this is action number one under quality jobs. You're going to hear every year if we're getting anywhere close to it. FIFA knows that they have a job to do in that regard. They also know they have to push FIFA itself. because they're going to employ more people than Toronto's going to employ in this thing, and they're going to come to town, and we're going to school them on what we hope they do while they're here. MLSE is a big part of that equation. We're in talks with them to say, here's the commitment we're going to make to youth during that big event. What about you? But the good news is they do some youth employment as well. But the employment situation in Toronto is such that even that popcorn guy in an MLS venue that always used to be a young person, as the economy softens, increasingly the age of those types of jobs is creeping up. Because as I've said, people older than you are now without a job, without a roof over their head, and they're creeping into those jobs, which means we have to create more. Last thing I'll say, and I know I took advantage of the time, but I want to go beyond swimming. We can create a few more jobs in swimming, but that's a program that already exists. But when I stand in a private gym in the private sector, as I do in the sport that my kids are in the room where the families can pay $2,800 a session each for the next 3 months for the kids to play basketball, I look around and I see 2 scorekeepers earning $100 each that day. I see 2 people on the till, and if you man the till, you get $200 a day, and they're going to do that Saturday and Sunday. And lastly, the convener, who has to be in their 20s, by definition, gets $200 a day. That used to be a thing that happened in the public sector. We used to have league sports. When I was a kid, my sister and I played public sector stuff. My parents didn't have $28 every 3 months to pay for a sport, but I was playing it in community centers because cities paid to have those league sports and be able to charge parents affordable things. And out of every league sport came a whole bunch of youth jobs. But we've been telling these people, you can't do that. Sorry, we're not doing that anymore. We're not in that business. If we're going to go from 7,000 jobs to 17,000 jobs, we got to ask ourselves if we should get back in that business. Those are my comments. We just have to vote on the replacement motion, and that directs staff to get to work, so to speak. All in favor of Chair Bravo's motion? Opposed? Seeing none, that can be recorded as unanimous. Okay. Thanks, Chair Bravo.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit us on all our social media platforms. Please visit our website for more information.